Ding dong. Accompanied by the mechanical welcome chime of the Family Mart's automatic doors, the cold, late autumn rain in Shinjuku was kept out behind the glass doors. My name is Kitsushoya. I'm a lowly wage earner saddled with 3 million yen in high-interest debt, so much so that I can't even afford tomorrow's rent. But right now, I don't feel the slightest bit of panic. Instead, I'm staring with great interest at the girl standing in front of me. Rin Jinguji. This, Ice Queen, of the Jinguji conglomerate, whose name is renowned throughout all of Tokyo, was now standing soaking wet next to the shelves at a convenience store. Her normally silky long black hair clung to her pale cheeks, and her one-size-fits-all sailor uniform jacket was caked with mud and water, yet her amber eyes, fixed on me, still held that aloof arrogance and disdain. Kitsushoku, you've been shamelessly trailing me the whole way, what exactly are you up to? Rin bit her pale lips, her voice as cold as ice. Even if the Jinguji family is facing a minor cash flow problem right now, it's none of your business, you lowly scum, to come and gloat. A minor problem? I scoffed inwardly. The news had already spread throughout Tokyo's business circles. The Jinguji conglomerate had suffered a total collapse in its overseas investments, and its cash flow had dried up. Last night, the Tokyo District Public Prosecutor's Office's Special Investigation Unit sealed off all of the Jinguji family's estates, and every one of Rin's black cards was frozen. This once arrogant young lady now had nothing to her name except a little change for the train fare. If I hadn't casually yanked her out of the hands of a few paparazzi trying to snap photos of her in her moment of humiliation, she would have been torn to shreds by the flashbulbs by now. But the reason I've set my sights on her today has absolutely nothing to do with playing the hero to save a damsel in distress, and certainly nothing to do with her pitiful self-esteem. It was because an ice blue, transparent panel, visible only to me, was flickering on my retina. Target locked, Rin Jinguji, overall appearance score, 99 points, perfectly meets the GODDSSES standard, system binding status, can be bound. Just half an hour ago, I unlocked this outrageous system called GODDSSES Cashback. The rules are so simple and brutal they make your scalp tingle. As long as a goddess, who meets the system's criteria willingly spends money on me, even if it's just 1 yen, the system will immediately give her a 1,000-fold cash refund, and it's completely legal, compliant, and untraceable. And as the host, I'll receive a 10,000x ultimate critical hit bonus. In other words, this is a crazy game where, as long as she dares to spend money on me, the two of us can run the printing presses in Tokyo until they smoke. And now, I need to take the first step to break the deadlock, get this desperate, aloof young lady to use the last of her pitiful change to foot the bill for me. Young lady, don't be so cold-hearted. I just saved your life, after all. I walked over to the self-heating vending machine, pointed to a steaming cup of latte inside, and rubbed my cold hands together. I'm freezing and thirsty right now, and I don't have a penny to my name. Since you, the esteemed heiress of the Jingongsei family, are such a woman of principle, why not show some mercy and treat your savior to a cup of coffee? Rin Jinguji looked at the cheap can of coffee I was pointing to, priced at 150 yen, with a look of utter absurdity and anger in her eyes. Are you crazy? You want me to buy you this junk drink full of artificial sweeteners? She instinctively reached into the pocket of her uniform. There were only a few coins left, the only money she had tonight to buy a rice ball to tide her over. What's the matter? Can't even the noble Miss Lin come up with 150 yen? I deliberately took a step closer, gazing at her flawlessly exquisite face as a mocking smile curled at the corners of my mouth. Or is it that the Jinguji conglomerate has truly gone completely bankrupt, to the point where it can't even afford to pay for a cheap cup of coffee? Those words pierced right through her last shred of pride. Lin's shoulders shook violently, and her eyes reddened slightly, but she fought hard to hold back her tears. She stared at me intently, as if she wanted to cut me to pieces with her gaze. Then, she suddenly reached into her pocket, pulled out a handful of coins still warm from her body heat, and slammed them down on the counter. 150 yen. Give him the worst-tasting can you've got. She said coldly to the trembling convenience store clerk, then turned to look at me, her eyes filled with humiliation and condescension. Finish this trash, then get out of my sight immediately. Don't pollute my view anymore. The clerk quickly handed her the cup of hot latte. I smiled and reached out my hand. The moment my fingertips touched the still warm metal exterior of the coffee can, a thunderous electronic sound erupted deep within my mind. Ding! Detected that the goddess, Rin Jinguji, has spent 150 yen on your behalf. Transaction confirmed. Bond officially established. Triggering the goddess's exclusive 1000x cashback. 150000 yen has been transferred to Rin Jinguji's secret account via a legitimate offshore trust. Triggering the host's exclusive 10,000x critical hit bonus. 1.5 million yen has been deposited into the host's Sumitomo Mitsui bank account. The source of these funds is absolutely secure. At that very moment, a muffled clap of thunder rang out outside the convenience store. Rin Jinguji had already turned to run into the rainy night, but her cell phone in her uniform pocket suddenly emitted an excruciatingly shrill text message alert. At this desperate moment, with all her cards frozen, any text message from a bank felt like a death sentence to her. Her face ashen, she pulled out her cell phone, her hands shaking so badly she could barely hold it steady. However, the moment she made out the words on the screen, she froze in place as if struck by lightning. It was a highly classified notification from Sumitomo Mitsui Banking Corporation. 150,000 yen has just been deposited into your secret backup account. Note, these funds are from an anonymous, legal overseas donation and are not subject to domestic freezing orders. They can be withdrawn at any time. For someone who used to spend money like water, 150,000 yen wasn't even enough to buy a pair of shoes. But for her, who was penniless tonight and couldn't even afford a meal, this windfall, which had come out of the blue and was completely unaffected by the freeze on her accounts, was nothing short of a miracle. This can't be possible. Lin rubbed her eyes in disbelief, her voice trembling violently. Just then, my cell phone in my pocket vibrated. I pulled it out, and the screen clearly showed my bank balance, which had been on the verge of going into the red, suddenly skyrocket by 1.5 million yen. From a penniless guy burdened by high-interest debt to someone holding 1 million yen in cash, all because of a 150 yen can of coffee. I pulled the tab on the coffee can open with one hand, producing a crisp click. The rich aroma of coffee wafted through the chilly air. I took a sip, looked at the Ice Queen, who was still staring intently at her phone screen, completely stunned and bewildered, and flashed a villainous smile. It tastes good. So, Miss Lin, take a guess. I stepped closer to her and whispered softly in her ear. If you buy me a Rolex tomorrow, how many zeros will be added to your bank account? The cold rain from last night had completely stopped, and this morning in Ginza Forchome, the sunlight was so blinding it seemed almost unreal. Rin Jinguji walked ahead of me, her high heels clicking with a fervor that suggested she was ready to face death. She had used the 150,000 yen from last night to buy a plain women's suit. Though it wasn't a handmade, haute couture piece, when worn on her tall, slender frame, it still exuded the innate air of authority befitting the daughter of a business tycoon. Are you sure you want to keep going? If last night was just some kind of system glitch, my last 150,000 will be completely wasted. She clutched a brand new regular debit card, bit her cherry red lip, and fixed me with a piercing gaze from her amber eyes. I smoothed out my cheap, worn jacket and smiled gently at her nervous yet expectant gaze. Young lady, you know better than anyone how those 150,000 ended up in your account last night. If you want to restore the Jingongsi family to its former glory, don't you have even a shred of courage? Lin took a deep breath, said nothing more, turned around, and strode into a Gucci men's store. The sales associate eyed my shabby outfit with a look of suspicion, but Lin didn't even give her a chance to speak. She simply thrust the debit card at her, pointed her slender fingers at the most expensive limited edition suit and leather shoes on the mannequin, and said in a cold, unquestionable tone, "Get him that outfit, including all the accessories, and ring it up." The total was 300,000 yen. Rin's fingers were trembling slightly as she entered the pin. It was her entire savings. A beep sounded, and the payment went through. The next second, the screen of the phone in Rin's pocket suddenly lit up. I watched as her pupils dilated to their limit in an instant, and even her breathing stopped. Your secret backup account has been credited with 300 million yen. 1,000-fold return, absolutely accurate. And in my mind, the system's electronic voice rang out wildly, like the music of the gods. Ding! Detected that the goddess Rin Jinguji has spent 300,000 yen on your behalf. 10,000x critical hit triggered. 3 billion yen has been safely transferred to the host's Swiss bank platinum account. 300 million. Lin clamped her hand over her mouth, her eyes instantly welling up with tears. It was definitely not tears of sorrow, it was a shudder of sheer exhilaration. The former heiress of the Jingangji family had once looked down on even 300 million, but for a girl on the brink of bankruptcy, with all her assets frozen, those 300 million were a stairway to heaven, leading her back from hell to the world of the living. Let's go! On to the next place! Lin grabbed my wrist. In that moment the Ice Queen's reserve and elegance vanished completely, and her eyes burned with an unprecedented greed and madness. For the rest of the afternoon, the entire Ginza district in Tokyo became a cash machine just for the two of us. We rushed into the Patek Philippe boutique. Lin Lian didn't even glance around. He immediately pointed to the store's crown jewel, the platinum watch with a starry sky dial, inside the glass display case. 10 million yen? Let's buy it. Put it on him. Swipe the card. The system's beeps were blaring nonstop. Rin's account skyrocketed by 10 billion yen. As for my account, 100 billion yen was credited instantly. We swept through Hermes and Tom Ford. When it came to men's luxury goods, no matter how expensive, Lin acted like a nouveau riche who'd lost his mind, lavishing them on me without a second thought. The sales associates, who had initially looked down on us, eventually became so fawning they practically wanted to kneel before us and worship us as gods. The entire luxury scene in Ginza was abuzz with rumors. A stunning, down-on-her-luck heiress was out on a revenge shopping spree with a young man. The more money she spent, the more she earned, and as for me, I made a fortune. In the evening, at Ginza's most exclusive 3-Michelin-starred restaurant, I was dressed in an outfit worth millions, with a Patek Philippe worth 10 million on my wrist, elegantly carving top-grade Wagyu beef. Across from me, Rin Jinguji gazed at the staggering balance in her bank account, which had surpassed 100 billion yen, and let out a low chuckle that sent shivers down my spine as she sipped an expensive glass of red wine. "Shoya," she said, her cheeks flushed, her gaze dreamy as she looked at me as if I were a priceless treasure. "I have money now, lots and lots of it. I'm going to take back everything the Jinguji family has lost." I swirled my wine glass, taking in the terrifying figure in my account, nearing 1 trillion yen, and smiled faintly. This is just the beginning. The entire financial order of Tokyo will tremble because of this insane system. But just as she was enjoying that perfect, slightly tipsy moment, Rin's phone, which had been sitting on the table, suddenly began to vibrate violently. The name flashing on the screen made her face go pale in an instant, and sobered her right up: Takayuki Kujo. The cell phone vibrated violently on the expensive marble tabletop, emitting a deathly buzz. As she looked at the 4 characters, Takayuki Kujo, on the screen, Rin Jinguji's cheeks, which had been flushed from a slight buzz, instantly drained of all color, turning as pale as paper. She instinctively clenched the wine glass in her hand so tightly that her knuckles turned bluish-white. "Kujo Takayuki is the eldest son of the Kujo conglomerate, and he's the mastermind behind the collusion with overseas capital to short-sell our Jinguji family, which has completely severed our cash flow." Rin's voice trembled with uncontrollable hatred. "The Jinguji family has a 10 billion yen bridge loan from Kujo Bank, and the deadline is midnight tonight." Before I could even speak, there was a loud bang. The door to this top-tier private dining room at the 3-Michelin-starred restaurant was violently kicked open from the outside. 2 senior waiters at the restaurant were roughly shoved to the ground. Immediately afterward, a young man wearing a flashy, dark red haute couture suit and sporting a slicked-back hairstyle strode in arrogantly, accompanied by 4 burly, menacing-looking Yakuza bodyguards. "It is Takayuki Kujo." "Oh, isn't this our high and mighty Miss Jinguji?" Takayuki Kujo's gaze roamed shamelessly over Rin's body, a sickening, lecherous grin curving his lips. "With your old man about to be taken in for a cup of tea by the Tokyo District Public Prosecutor's Office, you actually have the nerve to be here enjoying top-grade Wagyu? Surely you didn't pay for this meal with the money you've been secretly stashing away from selling yourself, did you? Kujo Takayuki! What on earth are you trying to do?" Rin jumped to her feet and glared at him angrily. "What am I doing here?" "Collecting a debt, of course." Takayuki Kujo let out a scoff, pulled a document from his coat pocket, and slammed it down on the table. The document slid across the surface, knocking over a glass of red wine. The crimson liquid spilled onto the pristine white tablecloth, creating a jarring sight. 10 billion yen, principal and interest, must be paid in full tonight. Otherwise, first thing tomorrow morning, the Jinguji conglomerate's century-old reputation will be completely ruined, and your father will be thrown in jail for debt fraud. Takayuki Kujo rested his hands on the table, his face contorted with extreme arrogance. "But you know what? As long as you sign this marriage agreement, obediently climb into my bed, and become my fiancé, I'll consider this money your dowry. How about it? Pretty good deal, right?" After he finished speaking, his gaze finally settled on me, sitting across from Rin. He looked me up and down, taking in the Gucci suit I was wearing, worth 300,000 yen, and the Patek Philippe on my wrist, worth 10 million yen, and a flicker of envy and contempt crossed his eyes. I was wondering why Miss Rin wasn't paying any attention to me. So she took her last bit of money and ran off to keep a pretty boy on the side? Your taste isn't exactly great, is it? Takayuki Kujo pointed at my nose with contempt. Hey, you penniless gigolo, get the hell out of my sight right now, before I break your legs. Faced with his brazen provocation, I didn't lose my temper. I didn't even lift an eyelid. I simply picked up a crisp white napkin and elegantly wiped the corner of my mouth. Is 10 billion yen a lot? I tossed my napkin onto the table and slowly stood up. What did you say? Takayuki Kujo burst into exaggerated laughter, as if he'd heard the biggest joke in the world. A good-for-nothing at the bottom of the social ladder who relies on women throwing themselves at him, and he actually has the nerve to act all high and mighty in front of me? Ignoring his frenzied barking, I took out my cell phone and dialed the dedicated hotline for Sumitomo Mitsui Banking Corporation's Platinum VIP customers. Since my account held a staggering balance of several hundred billion yen, the phone had barely rung once when I heard the extremely deferential voice of a top-tier financial advisor on the other end. I turned on speakerphone and placed my phone on the desk. I'm Kiyoshi Tachibana, I said, staring at Takayuki Kujo's arrogant face, my voice as cold as a Siberian wind. Right now, transfer 10 billion yen to the Kujo conglomerate's main corporate account immediately. The financial advisor on the other end of the line didn't hesitate for a moment. As you wish, Mr. Ju. The high-value transactions system has activated the highest-level green channel. 10 billion yen is currently being transferred and is expected to reach the recipient's account in 3 seconds. Are you out of your mind? Do you really think you can fool me by just picking some random person to act this out? Before Takayuki Kujo could finish his sentence, his personal cell phone in his pocket suddenly emitted an extremely shrill, high-pitched alarm. That was an alert sound that would only be triggered when massive transactions in the range of 10 billion occurred in the core accounts of the 9 major conglomerates. Takayuki Kujo froze. He fumbled for his cell phone and answered the call. On the other end, the CFO of the Kujo group shouted, his voice cracking with shock. Young master. Just a moment ago, a massive sum of 10 billion yen was transferred directly into our corporate account through Sumitomo Mitsui Banking Corporation's highest-level authorization channel. The remittance note reads, repayment from the Jinguji family. With a clatter, the cell phone slipped from Takayuki Kujo's hand and crashed onto the floor. The arrogance, lechery, and air of invincibility on his face crumbled completely in that instant, replaced by a ghostly look of terror and disbelief. He stared at me intently, and my legs began to tremble involuntarily. 1 billion yen, even his father, the chairman of the Kujo conglomerate, couldn't possibly move that much money in 3 seconds without alerting the board of directors. Just what kind of monster is this seemingly ordinary young man standing before me? Listen, Kujo. I walked around the dining table and stood in front of him, towering over his deathly pale face. I reached out and gently patted his cheek, as if patting a stray dog. I've paid off my debt. Now take your dog and get the hell out of my private room. I leaned in slightly and, in a voice only he could hear, said slowly and deliberately into his ear, if I ever see you dare to show your face in front of Lin again, next time, I won't just transfer money to you. I'll use 100 billion in cash to crash the entire stock market for your Jiotiao group. Takayuki Kujo, looking like a defeated stray dog with its tail between its legs, scrambled out of the Michelin-starred restaurant with his bodyguard. Rin Jinguji slumped in her chair, panting heavily, and the look in her eyes, which had previously been filled with fervor, now held a hint of awe. Shuya. When you transferred 10 billion yen just now, you didn't even bat an eye. This small sum is just a drop in the bucket compared to our plans moving forward. I put away my phone and gave her a faint smile. Miss Rin, you now have over 100 billion yen in cash in your account, more than enough to pull the Jinguji family out of the abyss. Go handle your business. The Kujo conglomerate will never let this go, so you need to build your own financial defenses. Lin nodded solemnly. She knew that she now had the confidence to reshape the landscape of this cutthroat business world. After seeing Lin off, I strolled alone through the streets of Shinjuku. The evening breeze was slightly cool, and as I looked at the dizzying trillion balance in my account, an unprecedented sense of control washed over me. But I knew the potential of the GODDSSES cashback system went far beyond that. If Rin were my only money-making tool, and if one day the system determined she no longer met the GODDSSES criteria, my cash flow would dry up. I needed more ATMs. Just then, I walked past a rundown underground live house, a small venue for live performances. A slightly rough-looking idol poster was plastered on the venue's exterior wall. The girl in the poster had eye-catching pink pigtails, and her sweet smile held a hint of barely perceptible stubbornness. Her name was written beside the image, Rumi Hoshino. It wasn't the poster that caught my attention, but a system notification that suddenly popped up on my retina. Ding! High potential target detected. Target locked, Rumi Hoshino, underground idol, overall appearance score, 95 points, meets the GODDSSES standard. Innocent yet resilient type, current status, extremely desperate. Extremely high binding success rate. I raised an eyebrow, pushed open the heavy, pearly soundproofed iron door, and walked inside. The show was over. The vast venue was deserted, with only a few cleaning staff picking up scattered glow sticks and cheering banners. In a dim corner of the stage, a petite figure was crouched on the floor, hugging her knees and sobbing silently. It's the girl on the poster, Rumi Hoshino. She was wearing a cheap stage costume, and her once flawless makeup had been smudged by tears. I walked up to her and handed her a tissue. All your fans have left. Who are you crying in front of now? I said in a flat tone. Rumi was startled and looked up like a frightened little rabbit. She took the tissue and frantically wiped her face. I'm sorry, the venue is already closed. May I ask who you are? A rich guy passing by. I sat down right next to her and looked her over without trying to hide my interest. So, what's the problem? The system says you're in a state of extreme despair. It can't be as simple as no one showing up to see the show today. Rumi paused for a moment. She hadn't understood the first part of what I said, but her guardedness seemed to crumble in the face of such profound hurt. She bit her lip, and tears welled up in her eyes once more. I was tricked by my agency, she said, her voice trembling with deep despair. They forced me to sign a shadow contract with an exorbitant penalty clause. If I refuse to go out drinking with those so-called big clients, not only will they freeze my career, but they'll also make me pay a 50 million yen penalty. I don't have that kind of money. I'm almost out of money for tonight's dinner. 50 million yen? I chuckled to myself. Compared to this system, that amount isn't even worth a speck of dust. Do you really like singing? I asked suddenly. This is my dream. A glimmer of light flashed in Rumi's eyes, but it quickly faded. But in this cutthroat industry, dreams are the least valuable thing of all. In that case, let's make a deal, I said, looking at her with eyes as mesmerizing as an abyss. I'll help you settle that 50 million penalty. I can even make you the most popular idol in all of Japan. In exchange, you'll have to do one thing for me. Rumi stared at me in shock, as if I were a madman. Are you kidding me? 50 million. I never joke around. I interrupted her, pointing to a worn canvas wallet she was clutching tightly in her hand. How much money do you have left in your wallet right now? She instinctively clutched her wallet tighter, her face flushing red. I only have enough left to buy one bento, 500 yen. Great. I took out my phone, opened a live streaming app that was all the rage at the time, created a blank account named The God Who Passed By, and then handed the phone to her. Now use the last 500 yen you have left to send the cheapest virtual gift, a glow stick, to my newly registered account on this live streaming platform. Rumi was completely baffled. She stared at me with wide eyes as if trying to figure out whether I'd escaped from a mental hospital. You're going to help me pay off that 50 million penalty, and the only condition is that I use the last bit of money I have for food to tip you with a 500 yen virtual glow stick? That's right. I looked at her, a devilish smile curving my lips. And it has to be of your own free will. Want to take a chance, Rumi Hoshino? Will you use these 500 yen to buy a bento and scrape by, or will you use them to earn a chance to turn this world upside down? Rumi stared blankly into my deep, impassive eyes. It was a look of absolute confidence, one she had never seen before. After enduring countless betrayals and moments of despair, something inside her seemed to have been ignited. She took a deep breath, took the crumpled 500 yen coin out of her wallet with trembling hands, and used the convenience store's top-up kiosk to add the money to her live streaming platform account. Then she closed her eyes and clicked the tip button. Whoosh! A cheap virtual glow stick effect flashed across the screen. At that very moment, the system's voice exploded in my mind like a thunderclap. Ding! Detected that the goddess, Rumi Hoshino, has spent 500 yen on your behalf. Transaction confirmed. Bond officially established. Triggering the goddess's exclusive 1000x cashback. 500,000 yen has been transferred to Rumi Hoshino's bank account through legal channels. Triggering the host exclusive 10,000x critical hit bonus. 5 million yen has been deposited into the host's secret account. As I watched Rumi's cell phone start to vibrate in her pocket, a smile gradually spread across my face. The second money-making machine had been successfully set in motion. In the dimly lit live house, it was so quiet that all you could hear was the faint hum coming from the ventilation ducts. Rumi Hoshino stared blankly at her phone screen. The text message from Mitsubishi UFJ Bank confirming the deposit felt like a sledgehammer striking her nerves. 500,000! 500,000 yen? She let out a startled cry, her voice cracking, and looked up at me abruptly, her eyes filled with disbelief and fear. What's going on? I clearly only tipped 500 yen, why is there suddenly so much money in my account? Is there a glitch in the system? Or could it be? She suddenly pulled her hand back as if she'd been electrocuted, looking at me as if I were a dangerous hacker or a con artist. Who are you exactly? This money isn't clean, is it? If the police find out. Calm down, Hoshino. I stood up and looked down at her, my tone as matter-of-fact as if I were discussing today's weather. This money is absolutely legitimate. You won't find anything suspicious. I've said it before, I'm just a god passing through. Now, do you believe I have the power to help you resolve that 50 million penalty? 500,000 yen might have been nothing more than the cost of a meal for Rin Jinguji in her heyday, but for Rumi Hoshino, an underground idol who was now penniless and couldn't even afford a meal, it was nothing short of a lifeline. She stared intently at the text message, and tears welled up in her eyes once again. Only this time, it wasn't out of despair, but out of the ecstasy and shock of having narrowly escaped death. I believe in you. Oh great God! She fell to her knees with a thud, her hands clutching my pant leg tightly, as if it were her only hope of salvation. Please help me. I'll do anything at all, just to escape that hellish company. Very good. I helped her to her feet. Go home tonight and get a good night's sleep. Tomorrow at 8 p.m. Open your live stream and go live right on time. I'm going to make sure everyone in Japan knows who's got your back starting tomorrow. At 8 p.m. The next day, in a cheap rental apartment in Tokyo, Rumi Hoshino, wearing elegant yet slightly nervous-looking makeup, sat down at her computer and started a live stream. The title of her live stream was The Final Farewell? On liquidated damages and the truth. Since her agency had already begun spreading rumors that they were going to sideline her, and even smearing her by claiming she led an immoral private life, tens of thousands of viewers quickly flooded into her live stream. However, the vast majority of them were haters who came to gloat or join in the insults just to follow the crowd. Only a handful of die-hard fans remained to keep her going. Hey, isn't that the snobby underground idol? What, are you finally coming out to play the victim and raise money? I heard the penalty clause is 50 million. You wouldn't even be worth that much if you were sold. Stop making a fool of yourself, just quit the industry already. As she looked at the screen filled with a barrage of malicious comments, Rumi's face turned pale, but she still held back her tears and tried to explain the truth. However, in this online world where views are everything and hostility runs rampant, the truth is often the last thing anyone cares about. Just as the atmosphere in the live stream was about to hit rock bottom, to the point where even the moderator was on the verge of losing control, a blank account with the default avatar and the username, a god passing by, quietly entered the live stream. Immediately afterward, the entire screen was suddenly engulfed in a blinding golden light. God of the moment. Donated to Rumi Hoshino's live stream, 100 Cosmic Class Super Battleships. God of the moment. Donated to Rumi Hoshino's live stream, 500 Cosmic Class Super Battleships. God of the moment. Donated to Rumi Hoshino's live stream, 1000 Cosmic Class Super Battleships. The live streaming platform's special effects system instantly went haywire. Those Cosmic Class Super Warships, each worth 100,000 yen, took over the entire screen one after another, like tireless war machines. 1,000. 10,000. 100,000. The golden light flashed so brightly that it was almost impossible to keep one's eyes open. It wasn't just Rumi Hoshino's live stream, the entire platform's feed was completely flooded with notifications from this sudden, staggering tip. The comment stream, which had been filled with insults, came to an abrupt halt. Everyone was stunned by this sudden, relentless barrage, so much so that they even forgot to breathe. 100,000 super warships. That's a full 10 billion yen. Oh my God! What's going on? 10 billion? The system must be glitching. It's definitely glitching. Which Chable heir has lost his mind? That's a cash tip. Rumi Hoshino covered her mouth and stared at the despair-inducing astronomical figure on the screen, completely frozen in shock. She knew it was me, but she never would have imagined, not even in her wildest dreams, that the solution I was talking about would take such a violent and shocking form. 10 billion yen was poured directly into the live stream of an obscure underground idol. This is no longer just about tipping, it's nothing short of a blatant, one-sided assault by capital. Just as the entire internet was in an uproar over this unprecedented 10 billion yuan tip, I was sitting on the deck of a luxury yacht in Tokyo Bay, leisurely sipping champagne. In the live stream chat, I calmly typed out a message and used a 1 million yen pin to top feature to make it appear at the top of everyone's screen across the entire site. I paid Rumi Hoshino's 50 million penalty on her behalf. The remaining 9.95 billion is her pocket money for tonight. As for that trash agency, if you don't declare bankruptcy by tomorrow, I won't hesitate to throw in another 10 billion to buy your entire company, lock, stock, and barrel, and then smash it to pieces in front of the whole of Japan. As soon as those words were spoken, the entire Japanese internet went wild. As for me, looking at the staggering balance in my account, which had skyrocketed after I bound two goddesses to the system and had already surpassed the 10 trillion yen mark, the smile on my face grew wider and wider. This game is finally starting to get interesting. Inside a penthouse duplex with panoramic views in Roppongi Hills, a property I just purchased outright for 5 billion yen. I lean back on the leather sofa, swirling the Macallan whiskey in my glass as I look down at the Tokyo nightscape below, which resembled a sea of stars. Rin Jinguji, sitting across from me, however, was in no mood to admire the view. Her face was deathly pale, and she was clutching an encrypted document tightly in her hand. Shoya, the way you dropped 10 billion in the livestream a couple of days ago has completely rubbed salt into the wounds of Tokyo's financial elite, Rin said, her voice betraying a hint of unmasked anxiety. Takayuki Kujo's father, Sojiro Kujo, chairman of the Kujo conglomerate, is a complete madman. He absolutely refuses to believe that someone from the lower classes could conjure up such a massive sum out of thin air. He's convinced you've obtained some kind of super virus capable of hacking into the entire banking system. Just an hour ago, the Kujo family mobilized all their high-level connections within the Financial Services Agency and issued the highest-level anti-money laundering freeze order on every bank account in your name. I chuckled softly and pushed a glass of whiskey toward her. So? Did they manage to freeze it? Lin paused for a moment, opened the file, and a look of disbelief flashed across his eyes. No. That's the most terrifying part. When the Financial Services Agency's investigation team tried to trace the source of your funds, the system immediately displayed a permission-denied warning. Not only were they unable to freeze your account, they couldn't even check your exact balance. Your funds are as if they're protected by some divine power beyond human comprehension, untraceable, yet perfectly legitimate. Since the legal route is a dead end, the Kujo family certainly won't let this go, will they? I took a sip of my drink and asked casually. That's exactly why I took the risk to come find you tonight. Rin stood up abruptly. Kujo Sojiro has completely broken off all ties. He's paid a fortune to hire the Blood Cherry Gang, the most vicious Yakuza organization in the Kanto region. They don't give a damn about the law. Tonight they'll storm in here, kidnap you, and use the most brutal methods to make you talk and extract the secrets you're hiding. No sooner had he finished speaking than a muffled explosion suddenly rang out in the otherwise quiet hallway outside the apartment. Immediately afterward, my code-locked blast-proof door, which was supposed to withstand a collision with a light-armored vehicle, emitted a piercing, metallic screech. Sparks from a high-temperature cutting torch flashed where the door lock was located. Clearly the Blood Cherry Gang Rin had mentioned had arrived, and they were acting with extreme arrogance, completely disregarding Roppongi's high-level security measures. Lin was so terrified that she stumbled backward, her face as pale as a sheet. Although she was the daughter of a tycoon, she had never before witnessed such a brutal, no-holds-barred Yakuza assassination. Sho! Run! They have guns! Rin instinctively reached out to pull me toward the emergency exit. But I just sat there, without even shifting my position, and even watched with interest as the door was about to be cut open. In this capitalist world, violence has always been cheap. Poverty is the only terminal illness. I calmly took out my cell phone. Lin, you still underestimate the power that 10 trillion yen can buy. Just as the blast-proof door was kicked wide open with a loud boom, a dozen or so Yakuza hitmen in black suits, armed with silenced pistols, surged into the living room like hungry wolves. Suddenly, a deafening roar of engines echoed through the night sky outside the floor-to-ceiling windows. Two heavily armed helicopters, devoid of any markings, hovered in the air just a dozen or so meters from the balcony, like ghosts in the dark of night. The blinding searchlights instantly locked onto every Yakuza member in the living room, illuminating them in excruciating detail. Immediately afterward, more than a dozen ropes were dropped from the helicopter, and a group of fully armed, world-class mercenaries wearing tactical body armor burst through the windows as if they had descended from the heavens. The red dots from their infrared sights were densely concentrated on the foreheads of the Yakuza assassins. The Yakuza members, who had been brimming with aggression, froze in their tracks. In the face of these heavily armed war machines, the light weapons in their hands looked as ridiculous as children's toys. The Yakuza boss leading the group was so terrified that his legs gave way, and cold sweat instantly soaked his back. "Let me introduce you to Shadow, a private military force I acquired exclusively from overseas for 10 billion yen, with a 10-year contract." I stood up, walked over to the Yakuza boss, who was trembling all over, and patted him on the cheek. "Go back and tell Sojiro Kujo that using such third-rate Yakuza tactics to test me is an insult to the 10 trillion in cash sitting in my bank account." The gang leader scrambled away from the scene with his men, not even daring to look back. With the crisis averted, the mercenaries quickly vanished into the shadows. Calm returned to the vast living room, and only the night breeze blowing in through the shattered floor-to-ceiling windows served as a reminder of what had just happened. Rin Jinguji stared at me blankly. Her original concern had completely transformed into an almost frenzied adoration. "The defensive game is over, Rin." I turned my head and looked into her amber eyes, which had reignited with a fiery glow, my gaze growing incredibly deep and icy. "Tell Rumi Hoshino to report here tomorrow morning. Since the Kujo family is so eager to die, I'll grant them their wish. I want the two of you to team up and spend a fortune for me, one so vast you couldn't even imagine it in a lifetime. I'm going to crush them with the most ruthless capital I can muster. I'll short the Judeo group directly and make sure this century-old financial dynasty is completely wiped out before sunset tomorrow." The early morning sunlight streamed through the massive floor-to-ceiling windows of the Roppongi penthouse, casting its glow on the conference table carved from a single block of Italian marble. Rin Jinguji had changed into an extremely form-fitting black business suit, and pulled her long hair up into a high bun, looking like an icy queen about to step onto the battlefield. Beside her, Rumi Hoshino still appeared somewhat reserved in the face of such opulence, but her once timid eyes now sparkled with a resolve that made her seem ready to face death. She wore a simple white blouse, and the after-effects of last night's 10 billion tips still lingered in her eyes. "Did you both sleep well last night?" I sat in the head seat and slid two thick, all-English merger and acquisition term sheets across the table toward them. "Shoya, the Kujo conglomerate held an emergency board meeting early this morning," Rin said, a hint of gravity in her voice. "Kujo Sojiro has mobilized a full 300 billion yen in funds to prop up the market, and he plans to launch a full-scale attack against us when the Tokyo Stock Exchange opens at 9 a.m. Today. He's even gone so far as to declare that he'll make you vanish from the face of the earth." 300 billion yen? That old dog Kujo sure is stingy. I sneered, tapping the table lightly with my slender fingers. "Since he wants to play the capital game, let's play a big one with him. Rin, Rumi, sign this document." Rumi picked up the document, and, upon seeing the dense array of clauses and the dizzying acquisition price, gasped in shock. "This is the entire Tokyo branch of Abyss Capital, a top-tier investment firm on Wall Street? And Japan's largest private intelligence network, Sky Eye Media? The acquisition price is 50 billion yen each?" "That's right." I leaned back in my chair and looked at them intently. "I want you to use the money in your own accounts to buy these two companies, and then transfer 100% of the equity to me for free." Lin and Rumi exchanged glances. 5 billion yen is an astronomical sum that any ordinary person could never hope to amass in several lifetimes. But for them, whose perspective on money I had completely transformed, it was merely the starting signal for their counterattack. Without the slightest hesitation, Lin was the first to pick up the custom-made solid gold pen, signed her name on the document, and immediately completed a cross-border corporate transfer of 50 billion yen directly from her secret account, which held a balance of 100 billion. Immediately afterward, Rumi bit her lip and used the huge sum I had tipped her in the live stream last night to pay another 50 billion yen. The very moment the transfer went through, the system's electronic voice, like a thunderclap, exploded in my mind with unprecedented ferocity. "Ding! Detected, Goddess Rin Jinguji has spent 50 billion yen on you. Ding! Detected Goddess Rumi Hoshino spending 50 billion yen on your behalf. Ultimate joint spending bond achieved. 10,000x critical hit rebate being processed at maximum speed. Congratulations, host. 100 trillion yen has been thoroughly laundered via a decentralized offshore financial network and fully transferred to your top-tier Swiss bank master account. 100 trillion yen. This is a staggering figure, enough to buy several moderately developed countries and enough to send shockwaves through the entire global financial system. In the face of this boundless wealth, which seems to have been bestowed by the gods, the 9 conglomerates' much-touted 300 billion in market stabilization funds is nothing more than a drop in the Pacific Ocean. Ding dong. Rin and Rumi's cell phones rang at the same time. As they stared at their account balances, which had instantly skyrocketed to 500 trillion yen thanks to the 1000x cashback, they forgot to breathe, their brains completely freezing up. Here we go. Ignoring their astonishment, I turned and walked straight toward the massive multi-screen financial terminal in the center of the living room. At that moment, the clock struck exactly 9 a.m. And the Tokyo Stock Exchange officially opened for trading. In the very first second after the market opened, driven by 300 billion in funds propping up the stock price, Kujo Group's shares displayed a false yet strong upward trend. On the financial terminal screens, Takayuki Kujo even openly taunted the media, declaring that the Kujo family's foundation was as solid as a rock and that any clown who dared to try to shake it would be crushed. A clown? I stared at Takayuki Q's arrogant face on the screen, a cruel, cold smile curling at the corners of my mouth. I dialed the direct line to the command center of Abyss Capital, which I had just acquired, and issued a single order to the group of world-class traders inside. I am your new boss, Kikushoya. My voice was cold and devoid of any emotion. I have just granted you access to 10 trillion yen in your accounts. Immediately, right now, and at any cost, launch a devastating short-selling campaign against all Kujo Group stocks and related bonds. I want you to break through all their buy-side defenses within 10 minutes. When the chief trader on the other end of the line heard the figure, 10 trillion, his voice cracked, but that was immediately followed by a frenzied howl, like that of a ravenous wolf that had caught the scent of blood. Yes, sir. Boss. Wipe them all out. The very next second, a bloodbath that would go down in the annals of world financial history began. A 10 trillion yen short position, like a meteor shower from outer space, crashed into the Tokyo stock market without warning. The Kujo Group's so-called, unbreakable, 300 billion yen buying defense was torn to shreds the instant it came into contact with this terrifying flood of capital, without so much as a ripple. On the stock price chart, Jiujiao Group's stock looked like a kite whose string had snapped, plummeting wildly at a bizarre 90-degree angle. 10%. 20%. 30%. A blinding green light, symbolizing the market's decline, illuminated Rin and Rumi's stunning, awestruck faces. In less than 5 minutes, the Tokyo Stock Exchange triggered a rare circuit breaker mechanism targeting the Kujo Group. The entire Japanese financial sector had gone completely haywire at that moment. Countless individual investors, institutions, and media outlets were screaming in despair. No one knew where this massive influx of capital, which seemed capable of destroying the world, had come from. I picked up a cup of coffee and watched, with an impassive expression, as the screen showed the Kujo Group headquarters in utter chaos following a margin call. This is the power of capital. This is the new world I rule. Kujo family, are you ready to face your destruction? At exactly 3 p.m. The closing bell of the Tokyo Stock Exchange rang out across the entire Japanese financial sector like a death knell for the 9 Zaibatsu. On the giant TV screen, all channels were broadcasting live emergency coverage of the breaking news. Outside the headquarters of the once mighty Kujo Group, the area was completely swamped by utterly desperate investors and angry creditors. Just 10 minutes earlier, the Kujo conglomerate had officially filed for bankruptcy protection with the Tokyo District Court. In the scene, Sojiro Kujo is being carried into an ambulance after suffering a sudden, massive heart attack. His survival is uncertain. Meanwhile, Takayuki Kujo, who just last night was acting arrogantly and threatening to break my legs, is now lying in a pitiful heap in the muddy water. Several suited investigators from the Tokyo District Public Prosecutor's Office's Special Investigation Unit held his head down firmly as they snapped cold handcuffs onto his wrists with a click. Charges of massive debt default, financial fraud, and stock market manipulation. These offenses alone would be enough to keep him locked away in concrete at the bottom of Tokyo Bay for several lifetimes. How long does it take to bring down a century-old financial dynasty? I used 10 trillion yen to come up with the answer, less than 6 hours. As night fell, a black Augusta AW-109 private helicopter slowly landed on the specially designated helipad on the top floor of Tokyo Tower. I stepped out of the cabin, the hem of my windbreaker fluttering in the gale. I had purchased the entire Tokyo Tower outright and cleared it of all tourists. Every passageway leading to the top floor observation deck was tightly guarded by heavily armed shadow mercenaries stationed every few steps. Standing at the highest point in Tokyo, I looked down through the massive panoramic glass windows at the concrete jungle below, bathed in neon lights. Countless vehicles moved like tiny cells and blood vessels, and in my eyes, the entire city's economic lifeline was firmly clenched in my fist, along with the staggering figure in my bank account, over 100 trillion yen. Master. From behind him came 2 voices, completely different, yet both filled with the utmost reverence and fervor. Rin Jinguji slipped into a scarlet haute couture evening gown, which accentuated her cold, noble aura, making her look every bit the vampire queen. In just one day, she used those 500 trillion in rebate funds not only to pay off all of the Jinguji family's debts but also, with the ferocity of a hungry wolf pouncing on its prey, to swallow up every last one of the core businesses that had been scattered following the collapse of the Kujo Group. Now, she is the openly all-powerful business empress of Tokyo. Standing beside her, Rumi Hoshino, dressed in a dazzling, high-end stage outfit, looked like an elf who had descended to Earth. Just 2 hours earlier, she had wrapped up a solo concert at Tokyo Dome attended by 100,000 people. Fueled by the frenzied efforts of the entertainment industry, it took her just 1 day to rise from an underground idol, who could have been sidelined at any moment, to become Japan's national diva. But at this moment, whether she is a business queen or a national diva, here at the top of Tokyo Tower, she is simply my most loyal follower. Well done, I said as I took the Romani Kandi Rin handed me and gently swirled the wine in my glass. Lord Shoya. Rumi took a step forward, looking at me with a dreamy expression, and carefully placed a black card on the table. This is all the revenue from today's concert at the Dome, tickets and merchandise sales, totaling 1 billion yen. I've already transferred the entire amount into your account. Ding! Detected that the goddess Rumi Hoshino spent 1 billion yen on your behalf. 10,000x critical hit bonus triggered. 10 trillion yen has been credited to your account. Listening to the system notification sound, which had already grown somewhat monotonous in my mind, I gave a faint smile. Money has truly become nothing more than a string of meaningless virtual numbers to me now. I walked over to the floor-to-ceiling window, with Rin and Rumi flanking me on either side. They didn't even dare to look me in the eye, but simply rested their heads devoutly on my shoulder and chest. Look at this city. I pointed to the dazzling sea of lights below, my voice echoing through the empty observation deck with an air of unquestionable divinity. Once, I struggled here just to pay tomorrow's rent, chased like a dog by loan sharks. Back then, the world told me that the rules are made by the strong. So, I bought all the rules. I spread my arms wide, as if to embrace all of Tokyo. The cold night wind seeped through the cracks in the glass, but it couldn't quench the ambition boiling inside me. 100 trillion yen is just the beginning. As long as this system called Goddess Cashback remains in place, and as long as human nature continues to harbor a desire for and greed toward money, I will be able to draw on the world's wealth without limit. Conglomerates, politicians, and even nations, all will become mere puppets on my chessboard in the face of the overwhelming might of capital. I turned my head and looked at my reflection in the floor-to-ceiling window. It was the face of the only deity in the inner world. Starting today, there will be no night in Tokyo. I downed the red wine in my glass in one gulp, my gaze piercing the sky. Only the light I bestow upon them will illuminate the city.